I'm really looking forward to having this conversation with Yasmine. She is the founder of Free Free, and I'm wearing one of the Free Free scarves designed by Yasmine. As you can see, full of color, bold, vibrant. And Free Free is an organization, an award-winning organization, which Yasmine launched in 2018 and has since grown into such a powerful ecosystem of change. Working with women around the world. But beyond that, you are working with governments, with Fortune 500 companies. And the reason I really wanted to share your story is because you are a true force of nature. I have witnessed firsthand what an inspirational speaker you are, what a conscious leader you are, and also you are so passionate about the work that you do and almost relentless in the pursuit of the free vision. And so, yeah, welcome, Yasmin.
Well, thank you so much. I'm truly honored to be here with you and your kind words. I could say the same about you since we met the first time. You've been such, an inspiring woman and just really opening up to this beautiful vision of free.
Thank you. So let's start there. What does it mean to be free?
Well, free, it's a space where we can be who we truly are. And the way we do that is by freeing ourselves within so that we can literally free the world. So we really believe that we're all leaders of change, no matter where we come from, no matter what career we have, whatever our life stories. Our life stories are really what makes us unique. We have different personalities, different gifts, different traumas. And being free is being all of that, is acknowledging our whole self and contributing to the world. It means that we're all contributing and collaborating and forgiving, and there's compassion and there is love, and more than everything, it's fearless.
Yeah.
So free is colorful and bold. It's arty, so we can mix, people from Fortune 500 companies with artists or with governments, and we're this bridge. We're really the space that we're the how that people sometimes, I want to do more, or I'm not feeling this, or I want that, I'm not feeling fulfilled. How can I contribute? We're the how, and we make things happen. So it's not just in our idea.
Definitely make things happen. A million things happen, and not just in one city, not just in one continent. It's all over. What I really find interesting about what you do is the way you use color, fun, art, fashion, even to tackle very serious issues and actually some issues that come from trauma and tragedy. And we'll get into also how it all started. But I find that really fascinating. And my question is, why did you use this method and this approach to communicate such difficult topics?
Well, I guess it's really part of who I am, I guess. So the reason I created Free was I was pregnant of a girl. I was working at Vogue. I worked at Vogue for 11 years. Was very successful in my career. Since I was 23, I became an editor of Brazilian Vogue. And then, I was shooting Giselle, 24 years old, and then Rihanna, just working with so many incredible people. And in this world of art and fashion and creativity. But it really didn't make me feel fulfilled. So when I was pregnant, I was just like, what am I feeling? What am I doing this? And because I did have, a life journey that wasn't exactly easy, even though I came from a very privileged background, growing up in Rio. My mother took her own life when I was 21. So I was just like, there's more to life. How can we understand that? And then because I was having my daughter and a girl, I went through my own healing journey of freeing myself from stereotypes and patterns and things that I thought I needed to be. And then that was really of like, how can we share this with the world? And how can everyone know that they can make any change they want to make? And they are amazing leaders that they can contribute. But how can we make this creative and fun and something that people like? Because at the end of the day, if you look at most of organizations, they're so dark and there's this heaviness to it. So free free is not about the heaviness. It's really about the freedom.
Yeah. The other side of it. It's
Yeah.
like once you cross that bridge, once you take the leap of faith,
Yes,
the rainbow on the other side.
we are the rainbow.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. And I guess it couldn't have been easy to transition from your previous career, especially, coming from such a remarkable place, an institutional place as Vogue in the fashion industry. What was your experience during that transition? How did it happen?
At the time, I was given a position, so I became the artistic director of Vogue. So I had this very big position, and I was I was invited to do that position so that I could bring a more creative, more, empathetic, more compassionate, more inclusive, more diverse language for Vogue. And because I had that big role, you're almost stuck to the role.
Yeah.
I call that the golden cage.
Yeah.
So it's like you're stuck to this thing that it's supposedly really good, but you're not happy, right?
Mm.
So it's almost, how do you break that cage? And Free Free was already part of the whole thing, but I still didn't have the courage to launch it until something really kind of upsetting happened to me at Vogue. And I said, this is it. I won't do this anymore. I didn't leave Vogue at the time. I was quite strategic. I launched Free Free while I was still at Vogue, but I was able to do it in a very, in a smoother way,
Mm-hmm.
because then I could test Free Free while still being in this other position. I started at Vogue at 22, and then, I launched Free Free when I was 32. So it was really part of my identity,
Of course.
So it wasn't an easy choice. But then if you really trust yourself, then you can really get there,
Yeah. Yeah. But it does take a lot of courage.
And you need to have a lot of
Yeah. Yeah. And I think you need to also have a really strong conviction in what you're doing, and have this strong passion, and be willing to take the risk ultimately.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think the passion, if you don't have the passion, you'll just leave it the first problem that comes up.
So what is the free methodology that you developed and that you first started working with companies, right? Or
We actually first started, our first contract was with the Department of Justice.
okay, that was the first one. Okay.
So basically the methodology is it's a research that mixes neuroscience, mindfulness practices, spiritual practices, art, fashion, Jung, psychodrama. So basically, the way I developed it is because when I was pregnant, I was still so traumatized with what happened to my mother. And, I had all that narrative that was fed to me that I thought that was true. I didn't even question it really,
And what was the narrative?
that my mother was crazy.
Yes, this was an important part of the story, the narrative that then led to Free Free.
That led to Free Free. So, that she was crazy because she was different.
Mm-hmm.
And I always thought that meant, she was mentally ill. And, the more I started studying these alternative researches, and even to heal myself, and meditating and doing everything, and just understanding even fashion as a tool for self and personal development, I just started realizing that that wasn't the truth, that my mother wasn't mentally ill, that, that was a narrative that so many women are fed. So
Yeah.
if you're different, if you're working, if you're independent, if you're this or if you're that, sometimes you just call it crazy.
Yeah.
Right? In so many countries, everywhere, in all different social
Mhm.
classes. So
Yeah, if you're vocal, if you don't perform, if you stand out, if you're
yeah. And women are not only called crazy, they're called mentally ill. Like it's a very serious allegation.
it's very damaging.
Very damaging. And so the methodology really comes for any woman in any circumstance that just wants to free themselves from whatever constraint or from anything in their lives that might be, just not feeling so good. So it could be even the simplest thing of like, I'm not feeling fulfilled anymore in my job, right? And of course, that's a big shift. That's we've been talking, and it really takes a lot of your energy if you're not happy in your work.
And I think so many people can relate to
Believe,
that.
and that's how our methodology is built. It's in 3 steps. First, you rise not only first, you're always raising your consciousness because that's how you have ideas. That's how you also let go of traumas. That's how we get the courage to do change. The second part is the creative element. So let's have outside of the box ideas. We don't want to do more of the same. We can go crazy and do whatever we want. But then we're not just doing ideas, we're actually bringing them to life. So it's like this 3-step process. And that is free. Where in different organizations, and there's no judgment because there are other organizations that do what they do so well.
Yeah, of course.
Right?
Yeah.
But it's consciousness is here and impact is here. We want people to join free that want to do both.
Combine both.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because it makes
In a personal level, what I love about free is that I really find women, and I can really connect with women that are people that I admire so much and that I want to hear more about them. And they're, that like-minded idea, but it's really true.
it is.
Like profound connections. But there is this element of just being yourself, and that's really healing. Just when you're in a place that you don't need to be wearing a mask.
Oh, it's so liberating.
It's so liberating to already, right? You don't need to do much, but yeah.
But that's huge. Getting to that. So that is huge. It's so simple but then so huge at the same time.
Yeah. And people feel it when you're authentic. Of course, it's not something you can fake.
Yeah, you can't really cheat the energy. It is what it is.
Yeah, it is what it is.
Doesn't mean it's bad. Doesn't mean it's good. It's just it's felt wherever it's felt.
Yes.
Yeah. And then the adventure continues. You go to Harvard to study social studies, and then you bring the world's top universities on board onto the free vision. So can you tell me more about what you did at Harvard?
So we did a dinner in Brazil with leaders, and we invited the president of Ambev, who is one of the biggest beverage companies in Brazil. And she's been on our board since she was at PepsiCo. PepsiCo has been a partner for a long year as well. And she was reminding me that, the first time I met her, I was with my little computer, and that I just knocked at her door, and she was the VP. She was one of the huge, top leaders in the country. One of the most respected. And she was just we were just having this laugh of like, you can go anywhere with your little computer, and that's true.
I can totally picture it.
That's what I did at Harvard. I was just like, you know what, I want to do the free club. I did a graduate program at Harvard, and on social justice. And that's when I had the idea of really expanding free globally, because I could see that everyone had the same problems, to be honest, and that everyone, even the most intelligent people with the biggest access to education or whatever, they were still having the same existential crisis or whatever. So just like, we just need to take this everywhere. And I started building the methodology. So we always have the methodology as the base, but then for different groups, for different kind of audiences, we tailor it a little bit. So we have it for violence victims for the foundation, or we have it for CEOs of Fortune 500s. It's the same methodology. But we created one exclusively for universities. We created a free club for the students, so students could sign up. And then they learn the methodology. So it's a consciousness and all the research in that sense so that they can shift perspectives
First and foremost, for themselves.
for themselves.
Exactly.
That's always number one. And then by opening because the free methodology helps you open your perspective. And then it brings this creative element, which is just a different way of seeing life, even if you're not an artist, because people go, oh, I'm not an artist, I'm not good in art or fashion. That doesn't matter.
Yeah.
But we teach that, and then the students in that case created their idea of how they can impact the world. And then Free, our board, approved that project, and we made it happen. So that's kind of the three-step process that we were talking about. But impact, just going back to impact, people have a wrong idea of what impact is. So people think impact is just going to a community, in a country that is going through problems, and then you can either give them food or any other type of, everyday support. And of course, that's super important.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it's not.
And that's one version of impact.
That is one version of impact.
Yeah.
The way Free works is that we equip these people, or women, primarily women. Of course, we sometimes include men as well because it is important. But we equip them with tools for them to be able to find solutions for their problems. This is how we do impact.
Yeah.
And, and basically when we're thinking of members, there's a lot of members, people that are part of Free that they're like, oh, how do we do impact? I have this idea, but it's really not about necessarily going to a community and doing that, but it's about contributing with whatever in service. And when I say service, it's not like, it's something that you do without expecting something in return. That's service.
Yeah.
And you can do service for someone in your community. And that's impact.
Yeah.
You can do service for someone in a vulnerable community. That's service. You can do service by advocating or by using your voice to share your story. All of this is impact in different ways. And that's what Free is really about, is not just the literal grassroots impact, which we do as well,
Of course.
but it's general, because the only way we will shift the world from fear and violence to love and creativity and possibilities is by shifting perspective and by knowing that we are creating the world that we're building. So instead of being in fear and being violent and in control of everything, what we really need is to shift that to understanding that we all have a part of this, and stop blaming. We're always blaming the government, and we're always blaming the companies, the corporations, and we're blaming the men or this or that, and that doesn't solve anything. We just need to have conscious about, okay, the unhealthy dynamics, because that's true. But then what are we doing about it?
It's almost as if you're making impact more accessible to people that think it has to be a very extreme thing,
Or I have to very a big
donation, or I don't know, it has to be emotionally heavy charged, or like all these, maybe, I guess, stigmas that we may have around it.
Yes.
This is making it more accessible and allowing people to contribute within their, I guess, first or second circle of environment.
It has to be part of our daily life.
Yeah, exactly.
There are people like me that have, they're doing all these things, but that's, we don't need to be all doing this. We can do small contributions, and that's a lot. That's so much. And it's basically, the more we do for others in a conscious way, the more we receive as well.
Yeah.
We all have this very big power of really contributing to change.
I really want to spend some time talking about the change that you essentially executed through the club initiative, because it can seem as something, I mean, I would imagine most women and men wouldn't even think about it. but you addressed period poverty, which is a real issue in some parts of the world. And I think this is a good example of how something which may seem so mundane and simple and we take it for granted,
Yeah.
but actually in some parts of the world, it's just not available.
It's not available. So yeah, this was one of the solutions and the
Yeah.
ideas that the Harvard students came up with during the club. And we had worked before with a company in Brazil called Panties, and they do period underwear. And we've been in the past, we've created like a training based on the methodology for to help women take away that stigma of period menstruation, right? We all have so much stigma
Yeah.
around that. And that actually causes a part of the period poverty, which is very big in Africa and Brazil, but even in Europe, you have no idea. There's a lot. It's everywhere, really. But a part of that, and that's why there is period poverty, is the stigma around it. So people think it's something disgusting, or it's I need to hide it. There's so much shame around it.
Yeah, so much shame around.
So much shame around it, and even guilt. And when we created this first project on period, was mostly to help women to reconnect with their bodies, because our bodies are such strong vessels.
Yeah.
And it's such, and I mean, our period is 100% part of our feminine. So when we disconnect from it, we're disconnecting from our creativity, we're disconnecting with our natural flow, we're disconnecting from our intuition. There's so much that because of the shame we block, right? So when the girls created it's called Free My Period, the project, and this project was leaded and is still led by Amy, who is our head of impact now. She started as the president of the club at Harvard, and now she became part of our team, official team, as head of impact. And she, she's in right now in Gambia leading this project. So it's really incredible. So what we did with Free My Period is we created this menstrual underwear. We prototyped a completely new menstrual underwear where we teach women in Gambia to do them.
Yeah.
So a part of resolving the issue of not having the right, pads or things like that, it is environmentally healthy, but it's also a business model for women to sell these underwear with, between them, so that they're not fully depending on donations. So at Free, of course, donations are important, and it's part of any organization, but we're not dependent on donation in anything we do. So that's why we have all our partners at the ecosystem. We have the enterprise, we have the membership, and we have the foundation. They're separate entities because they have different business models, really. And the foundation, whenever we're creating a project, we always think, how is this project sustainable?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, will these women depend on us for menstrual underwear forever? That's not sustainable.
Then what?
I mean, then what? Yeah, then it's not really helping them. So, what we created was really a business model that, for the project, that the women initially they receive a first batch, and that's where we donate, right? They receive this first batch of the specific fabric for the menstrual, because it's all specific. So for a project for the menstrual underwear, the training to do that, and then also
Is that your investment?
that's our investment. But then they need to learn how to sell that, right? They need to play a role, and that's what it's also empowering. Because if not, we're taking their power away again,
Exactly.
right? If we're doing everything for them.
So then in their mind, it's like, we can't do anything, or we can't be anything unless this external thing comes and saves us.
Exactly. And we're not that. Yeah. We don't believe that we're saving anyone. We believe in giving people tools for them to save themselves. Yeah. I love doing it.
Yeah. Yeah. I do want to spend a bit of time discussing the feminine.
Yes.
Why? Because first of all, I think the concept of the feminine and feminine energy is so overused right now in today's world in so many different marketing, branding perspectives. But actually there is something really meaningful and important to understand around the concept of the feminine and feminine energy. And actually, you've hosted a few talks with author and political figure Dr. Joanne Johnson Fries, yes, on understanding the history of women and how it impacts us still today. So not only that, so beyond, the reality of the essence of the feminine energy, but most people are just so not aware of the history and how it plays a role in who we are every day and society overall. So let's just start with what is the feminine? Let's just demystify this term for a bit, what that truly means.
So the feminine is not related to women or men in terms of sex, right? Or biology. The feminine is an energy, right? So we have the feminine energy and then we have the masculine energy. So the feminine is the receiver, it is the fluid, it's the flow, it's the intuitive, it is the love, right? It's the collaboration, it's the, it has this, that's the feminine.
Yeah, these are all traits of this feminine energy.
Of a feminine energy that both women and men have.
Exactly.
So we could be more in our feminine or more in our masculine. Women that are wounded, sometimes they're a lot and they're wounded masculine. Women that sometimes reach leadership positions because of the pressures, they go into a wounded masculine, not on a healthy masculine.
Yeah.
So the wounded feminine, so what I said was the healthy feminine, right? The wounded feminine goes into the victim consciousness. So what does that mean? So the victim consciousness is they're doing this to me. They're, this is happening to me. A healthy feminine understands that whatever someone is doing towards me is not about me. It's about their unresolved issues. So, but we women do have the tendency to go into our wounded feminine and enter this victim consciousness very easily because of societal constraints and culture.
Yeah, because that is essentially the conditioning.
That's the conditioning.
Yeah.
That's the conditioning. It's like, poor me, you need a prince to save you. So if you go into, the fairy tales and stuff, and that's not really true, right? That's the wounded feminine. When we're an empowered feminine, and this is what Free really works with, it's like you're empowered, you're fearless, you're courageous, you're still fluid in the sense of, you go with the flow, you're intuitive, you're creative. Creative is a very important aspect of the feminine, and you're full of love. So that's when you're in your wounded feminine, you close your heart and you contract. It's like there's a tightness and you feel it in your body.
Yeah.
So, and then the masculine is the wisdom. It's the protector. It's the doer. It's it's this external element. It's almost like the feminine, it's more internal. The masculine is the doer. It's it's the wise, it's the light. That's the healthy masculine. The wounded masculine is violent and is trying to control. And it's trying to manipulate. So it's normally what we're seeing in the world is the wounded feminine and the wounded masculine doing this.
Yeah.
What we need right now, and then again, in both men and women, and of course our intersectionalities, is to understand that we need to balance that within us, right? So when we balance that within us, we're able to have more conscious relationships. We're able to, not go into our feminine victim consciousness because someone did something to me, but understand that that has nothing to do with me. Even sometimes it hurts, but I'm not like, oh, poor me.
You can still feel the emotion
That's
or where that's
not
normal.
victim. The
Exactly.
victim is when you go into this loop that you feel stuck,
Yeah, that there's nothing you can do
that there's
about it.
nothing you can do,
Yeah.
and there's always something you can do about it.
Yeah. It's not always easy. It's not
No.
always available
No.
right there, right then. But ultimately, there is.
Even if it's not easy, you don't need to go into the victim. The victim is when you're trapped.
Yeah.
So whenever you're feeling trapped, normally that's the victim consciousness. And then if you are able to bring light to this, that's great.
Yeah.
And then, and the feminine is the creator. And you have the ideas and you're birthing all these ideas, but you do need your masculine energy to act on it.
Yeah.
So a lot of women as well, they have all these ideas and they're just super creative and intuitive. And especially when women become too, and we're all spiritual beings, but if we're too much sometimes, there's a lot of women and men as well that lose themselves in spiritual practices because they become very passive in the sense that, oh, it's divine flow and all that. But divine flow doesn't mean you're not acting on things.
Mm-hmm.
It's just meaning that you act and you surrender. You're not controlling the outcome. Does this make sense? Then the problems we see today in the world that are violence, wars, poverty, blah, 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 all of this division, that's very much the wounded masculine that seeks that seeks power through separation, division, violence. And this is where, because they are in their wounded masculine, they want to control women and their bodies and their emotions and everything. And because most women are still in their victim consciousness, they allow it.
Yeah, it's such an easy combination. It just fits.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It just the energy just goes.
Exactly. It matches.
It matches.
One thing that we speak about in some of the teachings that you give in some of the workshops is why a free woman has always been feared throughout time. And then you see how society has this visceral fear towards them. But then also in today's society, as you were saying, a woman who's bold and out there is called out for being crazy.
Yeah.
So why is the free woman feared?
I think there's this bigger element of fear because when women are very powerful beings, we're very powerful beings because we are very intuitive. Our bodies are really part of the cycles of nature. We birth life. Just like literally, so we birth ideas, we birth life, we birth so many different things. We're very sensitive, we're very intuitive, but we lose touch to all of that because of our everyday lives and the conditioning. So when a woman starts to free herself, she's reconnecting with that true power. And that's scary because then people can't really control you. And because most of society is still in the wounded masculine, if you're not controllable, you're crazy.
Yeah, you're a risk.
You're a risk. Yeah. So, I mean, that's not something people need to worry about.
No.
If people fear you, it doesn't matter because it's all about you being yourself. People will feel anyone, not only women, that are authentic or that are not fitting a determined role in society or just leaving their status quo. In the case of women, it's just because historically this has been happening for too long, but it's simply because we're too powerful. When we're unleashed from the conditioning, we access so much intuition and ideas and possibilities, and we learn because when we're in our healthy feminine, and that's what we see a lot of free. We're collaborating all the time. There's so much. We do so much,
and there's no competition.
Have you seen competition at free?
No.
Because I've never seen it, and I've seen it in other parts of society and also in other areas of free that is not the community. But in the community element of free, for me, it's one of the most beautiful things to see all these, because they're all incredible women, but they're all collaborating. They're not competing with each other. I never sensed that at free and the community. And that's very powerful. But because we've learned to compete with each other, and the wounded feminine and masculine, we're always ripped apart of this. And then when we start freeing ourselves, we're reconnecting with all of that and coming back to the truth. And I even get goosebumps because that's true power.
Yeah, it is.
And that's scary for whoever doesn't want us in power.
Exactly.
But then there's some amazing men that love it, of course. Right? That they're just like, yes, let's do this, right? And men are not the problem, by the way.
No. This is by no means like a segregation.
No, but I'm just saying this because, whoever is listening to us, is very important to have this very clear statement.
Yeah.
Men are not the problem. The problem is how culture has embedded conditioning to everyone.
Yeah.
So that's why raising our consciousness and having a different perspective of life frees us.
Yeah. And men also suffer from their own conditioning, which is
honestly have their own golden cage.
Yeah, exactly.
They're not connected to their hearts. They're feeling very lonely right now. So we really need to understand always, before we react, the why behind things are really happening. So very important.
Yeah. However, things are changing, definitely, and you are at the forefront of leadership when it comes to discussing and addressing these topics. And you recently attended some Davos conversations exactly discussing this. So what does the change look like?
I think there are a lot of people right now raising their consciousness. I think that's a real key for the moment that we're living in, especially because of technology and AI, and things are really advancing very quickly. So we can't really fight it. But we do need critical thinking, and we do need critical thinking comes from consciousness. So it's not about reading another book. We can read, I love reading, so I read lots of books. But it's not just about the traditional academic research. It's really about this research of your own mind, because our mind is very powerful, right? It's super powerful. And we need to use our minds in a more conscious way so that we can also go to the next level of the world where we are without fear. People are very scared of AI right now, and of the changes that are happening. And I really feel that the only solution for the mental health crisis that we are in, to the technology advancements that we're seeing, or even the polarization, is through consciousness. So that's why I'm, more and more Free is taking the Free methodology to as many high-level conferences that we can. So we're doing this year. We went to Davos. We're going to be at the South by Southwest here in London, and then probably Cannes. And we're doing a big experience and summit of some sorts. We're still deciding at COP, because it will be in Brazil. So it's just really taking this consciousness to places with high leadership, because of course change happens in the leadership level. Free works with both levels. We work personal level, but then systemic level, cultural level as well. So I think it's this effort of doing both.
Yeah. Really top down and bottoms up.
Exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
But I think even the fact that these consciousness conversations are even happening, or it's even possible to have them at this level.
I couldn't believe I was talking about consciousness at Davos.
Yes.
I really couldn't believe it.
15 years ago, 10 years ago,
and people were talking to me like, I get that. They weren't like, oh, this is too hippie, that kind of.
Yeah.
And it's not about this. I mean, of course, there are many different things in many different worlds. But what I feel is very powerful of Free is that we do bring consciousness without having that taboo of this is not for me, this is for the spiritual community, or this, or even the impact, right? As you were saying, it's made easy in the sense that, when we think of impact, we're thinking all these big budgets and these big things, but we can do impact in all these different levels. So I think it's really making this accessible, but not only accessible in the boring, but it's fun, approachable, and part of our lifestyle.
Final words of wisdom.
I would say that Um, don't be scared. I think that's number one. Whenever you're scared, that's not the truth. That's your lower mind trying to keep you in the same comfort zone. And I would say do consciousness practices, because that's what will liberate you to access, or even to find that passion, because it's that passion that will drive your business or your life decision to the right place. It's not the fear. So if you're in fear, you're going to make wrong choices. So if you're feeling fearful, meditate a little bit, get out of that mind, and then, you know, really allow that creativity to be unleashed.
So, yeah, to be unleashed. Amazing. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Darling. It's so good seeing you.